Welcome to Life Lessons from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where each week, twice a week, we discuss a section of the Bhagavatam and consider lessons that we can apply in life. Today, our topic, Jarasanda's defeat and 2.8 thousand kings. That's 2,800 kings rescued. We're discussing this on the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, chapters 72 and 73. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. Before I begin this discussion, as I await people's arrival, I will chant some verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam as an invocation. So we'll begin with 1st Canto, chapter 3, verse 40. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Nadyam Svastyaya Namahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. First Canto, chapter 3, verse 41. Tadidam garahayamasa sutam atmatvatam dvaram sarvaveditaha shanam sharam sharam samudritam. Srila Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized, after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and histories of the universe. Verse 42. Satu samsarvayamasha maharajam parikshitam payo pavisatam gangyam paritam param rishibi. Sukadev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the great emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganges, awaiting death without taking food or drink. Verse 43. Krishna Swadharma Pagate Dharma Janari Bisaha Kalonastadrisham Esha Puranarko Danodita. This Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. We'll chant a couple more verses as our invocation before beginning a more in-depth discussion. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 12, chapter 13, verse 15. Sarva Vedanta Saramhi Shri Bhagavatam Ishyate Tadra Sambrita Triptasya Nyanyatra Syad Rati Kvachit. Srimad Bhagavatam is declared to be the essence of all Vedanta philosophy. One who has felt satisfaction from its nectarian mellow will never be attracted by any other literature. 12th Canto, chapter 13, verse 16. Nimna ganam yata gango devanam achyuto yata vaishnavanam yata shambho puranam idam tata. Just as the Ganges is the greatest of all rivers, Lord Achyuta is the supreme among deities, and Lord Shambhu Shiva is the greatest of Vaishnavas. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the greatest of all Puranas. Well, I would love to continue reciting these verses glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam, but we should begin our discussion on Jarasanda's defeat and the rescue of 2.8 thousand kings who were kept captive by Jarasanda. Let me welcome Monica Sharma, who joins us from Sydney, Australia. Monica says, Hare Krishna Prabhu. We also have with us online Nikunja, who says, Hare Krishna Sri Prahlad Prabhu, joining us from Auckland, New Zealand. Thank you for being here. And then on Instagram, we also have Himani, who says, all glories to Haribol, all glories to Srila Gurudev. Welcome, Himani. Thank you for being with us. There are others here with us as well. Let me see. We have Tudi Yoga Reiki says Hare Krishna. That's Joan joining us from Moolamba. We have, Bolanath Bishwas, who says Hare Krishna. Thank you for being here. We have Nanda Mandir and Atish Jugannath. So welcome all of you to this discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam. We are discussing the 10th canto, specifically these two chapters, 72 and 73, that tell the story. Well, let's say they complete the story of Jarasandha, because Jarasandha, he appears much earlier in the Bhagavatam, specifically in chapter 50, when Krishna defeats Kamsa. Then we have a description how two of Kamsa's wives, they were daughters of Jarasandha. So they went and complained to their dad, Krishna has killed our husband and made us widows. And so Jarasandha was enraged. He assembled a mighty army, said to have been composed of 23 Akshohini divisions. So, an Akshohini division, we've discussed this previously. It's about 3,000 chariots. Sorry, not 3,000, 22,000 chariots, excuse me. 22,000 elephants, around 66,000 cavalry, and 109,000 infantry. So if you times that by 23, you get a staggering amount of chariots, like basically 500,000 chariots, 500,000 elephants, 1.5 million horses, and 2.5 million infantry. That's the army Jarasandha led to attack Mathura. We can guess he must have been a very good organizer or colonizer. Rather than kill Jarasandha at that time, Krishna and Balaram, they defeated the armies. But rather than kill Jarasandha, they let him go. So Balaram tied Jarasandha up and brought him to Krishna and said, what do you want me to do with him? And Krishna, he said, Balaram, we have appeared to establish Dharma and defeat the miscreants. If we let this Jarasandha go now, he will bring other demoniac armies to us. And so that was the plan that they agreed to. They let him go, and he did exactly as they had anticipated. He brought back another army, which Krishna and Balaram defeated, and they let him go. And he brought back another army that was defeated by Krishna and Balaram. How many times did this happen? I know you know. 18 times. 17 times Krishna and Balaram defeated Jarasandha's armies. On the 18th time, rather than fight with Jarasandha, they fled. And Krishna became famous by the name, what's the name? Ranchor. Ranchor means he who runs away from the battlefield. So devotees, they also glorify Krishna as Ranchor, the coward, for For the demons, this might appear, they might call Krishna a coward as an insult, but we celebrate this as well. Krishna ran away from the battlefield and he went to rescue Rukmini. So, you might be wondering, after all of this was chapter 50, now we're in chapter 72, 73. What happened after Krishna and Balaram ran away from the battlefield? We can call it a strategic withdrawal from the battlefield. And what was the source of Jarasanda's seemingly endless armies? And how was Jarasandha eventually defeated? These are all questions that you might be contemplating. And so today we will be discussing chapter 72, 73 of the Bhagavatam, and the saga of Jarasandha will be brought to a conclusion. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're going to discuss this under three headings. 1, Yudhistira's desire, chapter 72, verses 1 to 13. 2, defeat of Jarasandha, chapter 72, verses 14 to 46. 3, liberation of 2,800 kings that Jarasandha had imprisoned. Chapter 73, verses 1 to 35. So let's begin with our first topic, Yudhistira's desire. One day in Yudhistira's royal assembly, while Krishna was visiting and staying with him from Dwaraka, Yudhistira expressed the desire to perform the Raja-suya yajna, a grand religious sacrifice that would see all the kings of the world come and pay tribute to him as the emperor. And so he sought Krishna's blessings to perform this yajna. And we might have doubts here. Yudhistira, we generally think of him as a humble personality. Why does he want to be installed as emperor? Why does he want to have all the kings of the world come and submit to him and pay tribute? Yudhistira explained his intention. He said to Krishna that he wished to bring all the kings of the world together to bow to Krishna, that Krishna would be exalted in that assembly as the most honorable, worshipable person. And he wished that all the kings of the world would come and receive his mercy. He also wanted to show the kings of the world the power of Krishna's mercy and devotional service. So I'll read you a nice verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, chapter 72, verse 5. Tadeva deva bhavantas charanana vinda sevanubhavam iha pasyatu loka esha ye tvam vajanti navajanti uta vibhasyesam dishtam pradyarsha vibho Kuru Srijanayam. He says, therefore, O Krishna, Lord of Lords, let the people of this world see the power of devotional service rendered unto you, to your lotus feet. Please show them, O Mighty One, the position of those Kurus and Srinjayas who worship you, and the position of those who do not. So this is a very noble purpose. Yudhistira wants the world to see the glory of Krishna's devotees who have dedicated their lives to him. His devotees means himself and the Pandavas. In response, Krishna said to Yudhistira that this is a commendable plan. And he said that it would indeed amplify his glory across the globe, across the world. He said it would also provide benefit to many different groups. So this is important to consider as well. Verse 8, Krishna says, Rishinam Pitridevanam Suhridam Apina Prabhu Sarvesham Apibhutanam Ipshita Kraturadya Ayam. He said, indeed, my Lord, for the great sages, for the forefathers, for the demigods, for our well-wishing friends, indeed, for all living beings, the performance of this king of Vedic sacrifices is desirable. That's Krishna's response. So he speaks about how this will not just benefit Yudhistira, but it will actually benefit all these different groups, and therefore it is most auspicious and should be performed. He also said something wonderful about the devotee's glory. He said to Yudhistira, this sacrifice will be successful because my devotees cannot be defeated. My devotees are unconquerable. It's a very wonderful verse. I'm reading lots of Sanskrit verses for you today. In verse 11, he says, Na kaschin mat param loke tejasa yasasa shriya vibhuti bir vibhi bhaved devopi kim upartiva. No one in this world, even a demigod, what to speak of an earthly king, can defeat my devotees with their strength, beauty, fame, or riches. How wonderful is that? I'm going to read it again because this should give all devotees, aspiring devotees, encouragement. Krishna's declaration. No one in this world, even a demigod, what to speak of an earthly king, can defeat my devotee with their strength, beauty, fame, or riches. This is a powerful affirmation of the invincibility and supremacy of Krishna's devotees, or those who align themselves with Krishna's will, with Krishna's devotional service. And so with this endorsement, Yudhistira, he sent his brothers on a mission to unify the world under the banner of his leadership of Dharma, and thus preparing the ground for the grand Raja-suya yajna. So we can pause here and briefly reflect on some life lessons. One lesson is this, that we should be very cautious in assuming to understand the purpose of the Vaishnavas' actions. Yudhistira Maharaja's desire to conduct the Raja-suya yajna from an external perspective, from Duryodhana's perspective, for example, we might perceive it as a sacrifice for the assertion of worldly power, a bid to elevate his city, Indraprastha, over Hastinapura. But here, with Yudhistira Maharaja's words, his intent is revealed, and that is to honor Krishna, to show the world the power of devotional service to Krishna. And so we can take this as an important instruction for us. Be careful in attributing intent to the devotee's activities. What may appear to be even materialistic can in fact have a very deep and profound spiritual purpose. So don't judge. If you have doubt or if you want to understand, then ask. Krishna has asked Yudhistira to explain. Please explain. Why do you want to be crowned the emperor of the earth? Why do you want to have all the kings of the world come and pay tribute in your sacrifice? Yudhistira Maharaj reveals it to us. It is something much more profound than mere worldly power and domination. It is, in fact, to establish, to demonstrate in a practical and tangible way to the world the power of devotional service. Another nice instruction for us is Krishna's affirmation of the opulences of his devotees. Sometimes we think, there's a popular misconception, we could even say, that Krishna's devotees are poverty-stricken because they don't care for material concerns. Therefore, they live as beggars with no material opulences or facilities. This is a widespread idea. Here, Krishna says that the devotee is unparalleled in their strength and beauty and fame and riches. They cannot be defeated by any demigod or king. So this challenges the stereotype of also that there is an incompatibility between material prosperity and devotion as well. They may very well be reinforcing one another, possibly. Not necessarily the case. We also won't judge that someone has great material opulence. Oh, they must be very devotional as well. It doesn't work like that. Rather, Krishna, if he chooses to give his devotee wealth, if he just chooses to make Yudhistira Maharaj the emperor of the world, who can stop it? And if he chooses to take that kingdom away as well, who can stop it? Krishna, he is the supreme autocrat, and the devotee is surrendered to Krishna's will. And so some devotees, like Sudama, they may appear to be poverty-stricken, but then Krishna may decide to give them opulences greater even than that of Indra, the ruler of heaven. Either case may be there. And what is the deciding factor? Generally, it is, if for the devotee who's fully surrendered to Krishna, then it is Krishna, he makes the decision based on what he views is best for the devotee, to facilitate them in their service or in their relationship with him. So sometimes he may give, sometimes he may take, and the devotee, he sees all of this as Krishna's mercy. But it's not one way. It's not that only he takes. That is a misunderstanding. Sometimes he gives, sometimes he takes, depending on what is best for the devotee and also what is his purpose as well. Another point here, we can just add here, is that even devotees who appear to be poverty-stricken, they have the greatest treasure, the greatest wealth, and that is that their hearts are satisfied and happy. They are peaceful and satisfied and happy in their lives, in their relationship with Krishna. And so, although externally they may appear, in some instances, to be poverty-stricken, they are in fact the wealthiest people on earth, and that is their beauty and fame and strength. So there's another perception as well, just understanding what wealth is. There is a spiritual wealth that is internal, and it is worth more than all the material wealth of the universe. So that's another consideration. One last consideration before we continue our discussion on these pastimes, and that is to see how Krishna measures the benefit of an activity or the value of an activity. When Yudhistira said to Krishna, I want to perform this yajna, Krishna said, yes, do it. It is a good idea. Why? Not just because it will benefit you or some other family members or friends, but he says this will benefit the rishis, the demigods, the forefathers or ancestors. It'll please the Supreme Lord, and it will give benefit to all living beings as well. So this is actually a Vedic framework to consider these 5 stakeholders. And the Grihastha is obliged every day in the Vedic system to perform Pancha Mahayagya, or 5 great sacrifices, to benefit these different stakeholder groups. That we all have a debt, we all have obligations to the sages who preserve the Veda, the demigods who provide basic necessities, rain, sunlight, and so on, wind, and so on and so forth. We have an obligation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of everything. We have an obligation to our forefathers or ancestors who have brought us into this world. And we have an obligation to greater society, to all living beings, not just humans, all living beings, including trees and animals and so on, that preserve and enrich life. It is by the mercy of other living beings that we are sustained in our existence. And so, in recognition of these obligations, the Grihasta performs the Pancha Mahayagya each and every day. So here Krishna, he tells Yudhistira, do this sacrifice, it'll benefit all of these groups. These are all the groups to whom we have obligation. And he shows us how this is a nice measure to decide whether or not an endeavor is worthy, whether it is worth our time or effort. If it benefits these different groups, then we say it is a worthy endeavor. Now, you might be wondering at this stage, why do we not perform the Pancha Mahayagya sacrifices every day? And there is a good reason for this. And that is that if you're chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day, then you are benefiting the rishis who preserve the Veda, because the Mahamantra, it is the supreme Vedic mantra. You are pleasing the demigods. They're also benefiting by your chanting. You're pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're benefiting your ancestors. And you're benefiting the world as well. All living beings are benefited by your chanting. So by performing devotional service, you benefit all of these groups. And therefore, the Pancha Mahayagya, that is 5 separate sacrifices, are not necessary as long as you are engaged in devotional service. If you're not engaged in devotional service, then you are not fulfilling your debt. So in Vedic culture, specifically Grihastas every day, they make an effort to fulfill these debts. In Bhakti culture, then we understand that by the practice of devotional service itself, these obligations are being met, they're being fulfilled. Let's go on to our next topic, the defeat of Jarasanda. So, Yudhistira Maharaj had sent his brothers all throughout the world to collect tribute from the kings, from the rulers, and to have them declare their subordination to Yudhistira Maharaj as emperor. All kings did indeed submit to Yudhistira's rule, except Jarasandha. So either the kings voluntarily submitted to Yudhistira Maharaj's brothers, or they fought. There was a battle, and Yudhistira Maharaj's brothers, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, Sahadev, in different directions, they fought these battles and subordinated the kings, who then accepted Yudhistira Maharaj's authority. All except Jarasandha. He was a formidable foe, a powerful and proud king who would not accept Yudhistira Maharaj's authority. So but he's very difficult to defeat. If you remember, at the beginning of the class, we described how he had assembled a 21 Akshohini army to attack Mathura. So he's very powerful. He has a huge army that's of course, Krishna defeated that army, but in the meantime, he's amassed other armies. And so he is very difficult to defeat. He's also very powerful and strong himself, equal to Bhima, as we will soon find out. So Yudhistira Maharaj's brothers, they returned to say, all the kings have subjugated themselves to you, except Jarasandha. And so Yudhistira was thinking, what am I to do? How I cannot perform the Raja-suya yajna if there is a standout king who refuses to accept my authority. And so he called a council to discuss this question. And Krishna, Krishna revealed a strategy that had previously been suggested by Uddhava. We read this in an earlier chapter. Uddhava has said, rather than taking the Dwarka armies and the Kuru armies to then lay siege on Jarasanda's fortress and for many lives to be expended, better just go, a small delegation. You can go dressed in disguise as Brahmanas because Jarasandha is very charitable towards Brahmanas. And when he says, I'll give you whatever you asked for, then say, we would like to fight with you. And then we can fight Jarasandha in one-to-one combat. In this way, we'll save much unnecessary bloodshed because we don't want to take his kingdom. We don't want to put lives into danger unnecessarily. We just want to defeat Jarasandha himself. So that's exactly what they did. Bhima, Arjuna, and Krishna, just three of them, they went disguised as Brahmanas and visited Jarasandha. A very clever ruse. The Pandavas were accustomed to disguising themselves as Brahmanas. This is something that they had done earlier in their lives when they had to escape from the house of lack. And if you reflect on their lives even more broadly, you will remember that they were born in a ashram with Brahmanas. Pandu, their father, was living outside the city, outside the palace environment. He was living with the rishis in the ashram. And so the Pandavas were very accustomed to Brahminical ways, and it was easy for them to blend in, so to speak, with Brahmanas, assemblies, groups of Brahmanas. And when they had to disguise themselves, they would don a Brahmana disguise. So these three, they approached Jarasandha. They flattered him by praising his charity, and they expressed their desires. O king, we have come to you from afar. Please grant whatever we desire. And Jarasandha, he had some doubt. He saw that they look like Brahmanas, but look at their shoulders. They're so broad, so powerful. And I see the mark of the bowstring on I think it was the left shoulder. I also see indications on their heads that, from the use of weapons. So these are very strange Brahmanas. Nonetheless, they have come to me for charity. I will agree. And so he gives his promise. He says, you ask me whatever you wish for, and your promise will be fulfilled. So then Krishna, he revealed their true intentions. He said, I am Krishna. And Arjuna, he said, I am Arjuna. Bhima said, I am Bhima. And we have come to you for a jewel. We have come to beg a jewel from you. So Jarasandha, he declined to fight with Krishna. He said, Krishna, I'm not fighting with you. You're a coward. He remembered how Krishna had run away from the battlefield. So he considered fighting with Krishna to be beneath him. You're a coward and you are a killer of your own family members. Remembering how Krishna had killed his uncle Kamsa, who was also the husband, his son-in-law, Jarasandha's son-in-law. So I'm not fighting you. Arjuna, he said, I won't fight you either because you're too young. You're too young. And so you're not my equal. Bhima, however, he is my equal in every way, and therefore I agree to fight with him. And so Bhima and Jarasandha, they fought a fierce battle outside of the city for many, many days. And because they were so evenly matched, neither was able to defeat the other. During the day, they would fight. During the night, then Jarasandha would entertain them and treat them as his guests. And then in the day, again, they would return to their fighting. And so like this, it went on for many days. Finally, Krishna, he, knowing the secret of Jarasanda's birth, he demonstrated a strategy to Bhima on how he could defeat Jarasandha. Jarasanda's father had been unable to have children. He had 2 queens, and neither of them were able to give him a child. And so he requested a sage to bless him with a child, and the sage said, you take this food, this prasad, and you give it to your favorite queen. And if once she has eaten it, shortly after eating it, she will become pregnant. So that's exactly what he did, except that when he had gone to the palace, his 2 queens, they were saying, give the food to me. No, give it to me. No, I'm the prettiest. No, I'm the smartest. No, I love you the most. And so he was unable to decide between them. So he divided the prasad between them, and each had half a portion. It solved the problem for the time being. However, they both became pregnant, and once they gave birth, they each gave birth to half a child. And so this was quite terrifying for all involved. 2 halves of a child born to the queens. And so they left these 2 halves of the child in the forest, where they were found by a witch named Jara. And Jara, she used her magical power to join these 2 halves of the child together and make them whole. And so this child was called Jarasanda, the child that has been made whole by Jara. So remembering this history, in the heat of the battle, Krishna standing on the side, observing the fighting between Bhima and Jarasandha, he got Bhima's attention and lifted a twig and tore it down the middle. And with that beam, he understood what he had to do. He flipped Jarasandha over, put 1 foot on Jarasandha's foot, and then lifted the other leg and tore Jarasandha down the middle. And in that way, he was able to kill him. And this resulted in mourning among the subjects of Jarasandha and his relatives. Krishna, he installed Jarasandha's son as the ruler of Magadha, that is the kingdom of Jarasandha, and he freed the kings whom Jarasandha had imprisoned. So we can pause here before discussing those kings and just reflect briefly. One thing we can appreciate here is the intention of justice. When Krishna installed Jarasandha's king as the ruler of Magadha, as well as in his liberating the imprisoned kings, it shows us how Krishna's actions are driven by principles of justice rather than a desire for personal gain or power. Of course, Krishna is the ruler of all beings, but in terms of these pastimes, it's interesting to note how Krishna, he never takes the kingdom or the throne, the crown of any of the kings that he defeats, whether it is Kasiraj, or whether it is Narakasura, or here, Jarasandha. In each instance, Krishna crowns the son of the king that he has punished on the throne. In doing so, he shows us that his defeating that king is motivated by justice, by dharma, rather than a desire for personal power. So this is an important observation. Krishna does not take the kingdom of any king that he defeats. Rather, he just removes an unqualified king and reestablishes Dharma on the throne. There's also something else to observe that's interesting. That is Jarasanda's virtue. He appears quite virtuous. He keeps his promise. He is giving charity. And so there is a duality here that might cause some confusion, or at least shows us the complex nature of virtue. Here we see actions that can be seen to be virtuous. They coexist with other harmful deeds as well. And so this invites us to examine the nature of virtue beyond the superficial external appearances, showing us that virtue is not just about outward actions, but also the underlying intentions as well. We see that on one level, Jarasandha is virtuous. On the other, he's imprisoned 2,700 kings and taken their kingdoms. You might say, well, it's based on fair principles of that time. One king challenges and defeats another. It's fair play. Even so, we see that Jarasandha has a demoniac nature, demoniac intention for just increasing his power, amassing his power, causing pain and suffering to others just for the sake of his own power, and then using virtue to create some piety or some good reputation. And so we must see the whole picture, the whole character of the person, of the whole character of a person. Virtue is indeed complex. Let's go to our third topic, the liberation of 2,800 kings. Did I say 700? It's 2,800. Upon the death of Jarasandha, Krishna released these kings. They all appeared skinny, that is, emaciated. They hadn't been receiving proper food, and therefore they were all malnourished. They were all dressed in rags. They were living in a confined space, prison cells, and a dark environment. When they saw Krishna, the light that is Krishna, the Krishna's effulgent form, these kings were filled with ecstasy, and the pain and the fatigue that they all felt was dispelled just by the sight of Krishna. And with folded hands, these kings, they glorified Krishna. They prayed for relief from material existence. Very interestingly, they did not express any blame towards Jarasandha. They recognized that their experiences were on account of, one, their own karmas, or Krishna's will, divine will. And so they accepted that as it was, without cursing or blaming Jarasandha. They also reflected how this experience had also been beneficial for them. That previously, on account of their past arrogance, they had not paid any attention to spiritual topics, to spiritual life. And now that they had experienced this suffering, this difficulty, they had been humbled and they had reflected more deeply about the real purpose and value of life. And so they offered a prayer to Krishna, a specific request that I would like to read to you as well. Canto 10, chapter 73, verse 15. Tanda samardishopayam yeda te charanajaya smriteryatana vimbramed ati samsaratam iha. Please tell us, the kings say, how we may constantly remember your lotus feet, though we continue in the cycle of birth and death in this world. In other words, although we are conditioned, although we're not pure devotees, we beg for your mercy. We beg for your grace that we will always be able to remember your lotus feet. That's their prayer. They could have prayed for anything from Krishna. That is what they requested, to be able to remember Krishna's lotus feet life after life and not forget them. Krishna responded by assuring the kings of the fulfillment of their devotion, and he emphasized the dangers of being intoxicated by power and opulence, and he advised the kings how they should live. Santamanta prajatanum shukam dukam bhava bhavo praptam cha sevanto bachita bachirisyata. As you live your lives, begetting generations of progeny and encountering happiness and distress, birth and death, always keep your minds fixed on me. One more verse that I would like to read, Krishna's instructions to the kings. Udashinascha dehadav atmanama vrata mayaveshya mana samyam mamante brahmayasyata. Be detached from the body and everything connected to it, remaining self-satisfied, steadfastly keep your vows while concentrating your minds fully on me. In this way, you will ultimately attain me, the supreme absolute truth. And so Krishna's encourages the kings to return to their kingdoms, to rule their kingdoms, but he says, while doing so, remember me. All that you do it with remembrance of me. Keep your minds fixed on me, and thus you will ultimately come to me. And so on Krishna's order, the kings were ceremoniously bathed. They were dressed in nice royal attire. They were adorned with jewels and fine garments, and they were escorted back to their kingdoms in chariots, ready to resume their kingly duties as Krishna had instructed them. And Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna, they returned to Indraprastha, where they reported to King Yudhistira Maharaj all that they had encountered and experienced. So we can reflect here on the king's response to their situation. One is their acceptance of their ordeal as either karma or, even at a more profound level, divine will. So this is an important lesson for us. They're not harboring resentment towards Jarasandha. They accept that even though they suffered, they also benefited. So that's also nice, just to look back and see, how did I benefit from this, even though it was difficult and painful? And so this teaches us to see life's challenges not as setbacks, but as divinely orchestrated opportunities for growth and spiritual development. It also encourages us to develop an attitude of surrender to divine will, recognizing that all of our experiences, they can contribute to a higher purpose and help to shape us into more humble and compassionate and spiritually evolved beings. We can also reflect on the prayer of these kings. They have the opportunity to ask anything of Krishna, but after their experience, they've developed this realization. What really matters in life is not material opulence and position and power and glory and fame. It's really my relationship with the divine, my relationship with Krishna. And so they pray that whatever we experience in life, even not just this life, but in future lives as well, let us always remember you. If we have to remain in the material world, experiencing birth and death, even let that be so. But may we always remember you. May we always remember your lotus feet, teaching us. So what we take from this is that we should prioritize our spiritual practice and connection with Krishna in whatever we do. In whatever we do, we maintain a focus on our devotional purpose. Finally, we can also reflect on how Krishna has advised these kings. He hasn't told the kings, okay, now you have realization, go off to the forest and perfect your spiritual lives. He recognizes them for who they are. They are kings. They have families. They have citizens. They have ministers. They have relationships. They have attachments. They're not ready for full renunciation, and he doesn't instruct them to undertake that. Rather, he tells them to return to their kingdoms, to rule their citizens, but to do so while fixing their minds on him, practicing devotional service, seeking to remember Krishna in all that they do, and thus gradually purifying themselves. And he says, you do this, you will come to me. In time, you will come to me. So this is an important reminder for you and I of the importance of cultivating an inner life of devotion as we live our outer lives with whatever responsibilities may be there to family, to society, whatever our role in society, whatever work we perform. That's all well and fine. What is important is that internally we cultivate devotion, we cultivate our relationship with Krishna. So let's conclude then with a prayer. Beloved Krishna, in the stillness of our hearts, where the whispers of wisdom gently stir the soul, we raise our voices in prayer to you. O Krishna, on the path of devotion, let us embody the essence of Yudhistira's pure intent. His Raja-suya yajna, performed not for the crown, but for the glory of your lotus feet. May we learn the art of seeing beyond the veil of appearance to find the opulence of devotion that knows no defeat, a devotion that enriches not just ourselves, but the cosmos at large. And may our actions reflect a deeper intention, one that nurtures the well-being and happiness of all beings, rooted in your divine love. As we stand before you, like the kings you liberated from Jarasanda's jail, let our hearts overflow with gratitude, not for the freedom from chains, but for the liberation of our souls from the shadow of ignorance. Teach us to cherish every moment as an opportunity to grow closer to you, to see your hand in every trial and your grace in every triumph. And so, with hearts yearning for your remembrance, we pray for the strength to live virtuously in your service. May we navigate this material world with our minds anchored in your divinity, our actions steeped in devotion, and our lives a testament to the unending beauty of surrendering to your will. So thank you all very much for your presence for this discussion, both on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube as well. Let me acknowledge some of you who joined after I started speaking earlier. We have Nikunja with us from Norway, who sends gratitude. We have Alicia joining us from Auckland, New Zealand, who says, Kia ora, Prabhu. Hope you're safe and well. Nectar. Thank you, Alicia. Safe and well by Krishna's grace. back home in New York City after 3 weeks in Rishikesh. Long distant travel, but all went well by Krishna's mercy. Nikunja says Danika is here today. Easter holidays continuing for most schools. Excellent. Danika, we're so glad you could join us and be present for this class. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Jarasanda. Harinam Daya Sindhu joins us from Sydney, Australia. Harinam says, Hari Hari. Harinam, I will reply to you very soon, the next day. For me, that's very soon, as you may well know. Janamamata says, Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Janamamata joining us from Dunedin in the South Island of New Zealand. Ganga Seva says, Hare Krishna Sri Prahlad Prabhu, thank you very much for your guidance for us. How can we see the deepness in the devotee around us? How can we become deep in Krishna consciousness? Thank you. Good questions. Ganga Seva is asking this question in relation to the point we were discussing earlier, where externally it might appear that Yudhistira Maharaj is hungry for power. He wants to perform the Raja-suya yajna, wherein all the kings of the world will pay tribute to him and accept his authority as the emperor. But when Krishna asked, why do you want to do this? Yudhistira explained, because I want the people to see the power of your devotional service. For Yudhistira Maharaj, basically, this is his preaching program. And sometimes when devotees enact some preaching strategy, some strategy to outreach and connect with others, they get criticized. Oh, what are they doing? This is so materialistic. Without understanding their deeper intention and purpose, sometimes devotees can be quick to judge. And that's just one example. There will be so many examples how devotees are choosing to live their lives, and they have reasons for choosing one thing or another. And without understanding that devotee and their intent, we can be quick to judge. We can be quick to judge their purpose, which may be very deep. And so Ganga Seva is asking us, how can we see the depth of the devotees around us? And how can we become deep ourselves? So Krishna, he tells us in the Gita that the yogi is very deep, and he says like a still river. The still river is deep, but it doesn't make much sound. Whereas the shallow river makes lots and lots of noise. The rapids going over the rocks, they make lots of noise. So one way we can appreciate the depth of a devotee is also in their humility. Someone who has deep realization and insight and purpose, they will also be humble. They may be a powerful leader, but at the same time, like Prabhupada, he's a very powerful leader, but he's also very humble. Whereas somebody who's very shallow, they make lots of noise trying to attract attention to themselves or even make a show of being an advanced devotee. Of course, we don't want to judge them either. It's also that they're trying to be a devotee or engaged in devotional service is also glorious. So we don't want to be casting judgment on any devotee, but we can also just reflect, even for ourselves, that one indicator of somebody's depth is their humility. Another indicator of somebody's depth is their spiritual insight and realization. And that we can understand only by hearing from them. When Yudhistira is asked by Krishna, then he reveals his intent. And so we can judge the devotee's character. We can understand the quality of the devotee also by hearing. We can ask questions of them, or we can find opportunities wherein we can be exposed to their insights and realizations. So another indicator of depth would be steadiness in practice. When there is steadiness, then that can also be an indicator of deep realization and commitment. Steadiness. So we have this word guru. Guru means heavy, we say. It is heavy, not that they are angry, heavy in the sense that their personality is heavy, but it is heavy with realization, heavy with knowledge. And this being heavy with knowledge makes the devotee also steady, stira, or fixed, nishta. One who doesn't have deep spiritual understanding, knowledge, and realization, then they will be lagu, light. The opposite of guru, lagu, light. They get blown around like the wind, lots and lots of doubts. And try this thing, that thing, another thing. Not fixed, not steady, not focused. And so humility, spiritual insight, realization, and steadiness, these will all be indicators of depth. In terms of how we can develop this ourselves, one would be by the association we keep. The other would be by service, because we get realization through service. So steadiness in service brings realization. When we first hear philosophy, then it is theoretical. When we apply it in practice, then we get realization or insight. So applied in practice means to engage in service. So through the process of devotional service, we get realization, and that is brings a certain depth as well. So thank you so much for the question, Ganga Seva, a very, very important question you've raised. Joan is with us from Mawilamba. Joan says, Hari Bol. Jai Joan, thanks for being here. Ganga Seva says, same Sri Ram after defeating Ravana, coronate Vibhishana on the throne of Sri Lanka. Absolutely. So Ganga Seva's also raising another point. Earlier I said, when Krishna defeats the king, he establishes the king's son. He doesn't want to take the throne, the crown for himself. And I gave different examples from Krishna Lila. Ganga said that, and you find the same in Ram Lila as well. Ram doesn't want to take Ravana's throne or crown. He establishes his brother Vibhishana on the throne. Janaki's with us from Hungary. Janaki says, Hari Bol. Thank you for being here, Janaki. Then we have Ganga Seva, who says, can we understand this pastime with Jarasanda as we be so long in the material world? Then Krishna came to us with a spiritual master, saving us from material clutches. Yeah, so Krishna's liberating the kings. Is also, we can also see it as how Krishna liberates us from we're captured by the demons of lust, anger, greed, and so on. They colonize us, they imprison us, and then Guru and Krishna come and free us from the clutches. We are rescued from that captivity. Very good, thank you. So Gora Nitai Das, I think it is, joining us from Ukraine, says, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. We always appreciate when you're with us, that you remind us of our God brothers and God sisters in a very difficult situation in Ukraine. And we ask everyone to keep these devotees in your prayers. Gorachandra Ji, we see some questions here on Insta as well, so we'll come to those in a second. Gorachandra says, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Sorry wasn't able to join for some time as just got back from 6 weeks of pilgrimage. Went to Sri Mayapur, Sri Ekachakra Dham, Sri Puri Dham, Bhuvaneshwar, and Sri Vrindavan Dham. You're most fortunate, Gorachandra. You're able to visit all of those holy places, and I'm guessing you're feeling spiritually recharged and energized. Thanks for joining, Gorachandra, after your pilgrimage. Jadava Mata says, thank you for another wonderful, class. So many great lessons and realizations. Your prayers are divine. Outpouring of the heart. I would really love them. I really would love them all in a book or for current and future generations to relish. Let's do it. Jai Jadava Mata, you're always encouraging us. Ganga says, thank you. Thank you, Ganga, for being with us and for your questions. Advaita says, nice point about Prabhupada. He is loud in a humble way. Nice point about steadiness too. Deep devotees are fixed in their shelter in Krishna's grace. Advaita Simha, so happy to see you. So for those of you who don't know, Advaita Simha was a childhood friend of mine living in Christchurch, New Zealand. So always happy when we see you, Advaita Simha, when we see your name. And thank you for sharing your realizations as well, your insights. Grateful, full of gratitude here. Kirtina says, thank you for a beautiful class. Thank you, Kirtina. Achutananda says, I came late, but just in time to hear those wonderful prayers. Thanks, Achutananda, joining us from the UK. Let's just go to some devotees on Insta. So Shiva Malia says, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Shiv here from Mumbai. Thanks for joining, Shiv. It's been a while. Great to have you with us again. We have so it's Lilavan says, Prabhu, I have one question that how can we become pure ourselves from Maya or material things? My English is not so good. A good question. It's Lilavan. And the answer to questions like this, like how to, is there's a simple response, and it is the process of devotional service. How to become more humble, how to become more fixed, how to become more focused, how to steady the mind. Of course, we can go into the details on each of these, but in a general sense, we say we practice the process of devotional service. We chant the holy name, we serve Vaishnavas, we serve the holy Nam, we serve the Sri Vigraha, the deity, and through these practices, we are purified. The process of devotional service purifies us, particularly in our time. Then the chanting of the holy name is particularly recommended. Japa and Kirtan, they are emphasized by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Dharma for this age. But of course, we practice them in association with devotees, or by the mercy of devotees. So we mustn't forget that either. So thank you so much for the question. Yeah, so It's Lilavan says he's watching from Bangladesh. Wow, that's amazing. Yoga Priscilla says, thank you for this wonderful moment. Thank you, Yoga Priscilla. Premeshwari Vishnu Priya says, wonderful discussion. Thank you, Premeshwari. Bhargava Tom says, Hari Bol. Thank you, Bhargava. Chaitanya Chintamani is with us as well. Cyprus Photographer also joined. Smit Parma says, Hari Bol. Ashish says, Hare Krishna from Festival of Chariots, South Africa. Jai. Devotees joining from everywhere. Bolonath Vishwanatha says, Hare Krishna. So thank you all so very much for being here. I'm grateful for your association and for this opportunity to relish Srimad Bhagavatam together. I wish you well. I wish you health and happiness. I wish you satisfaction and peace in your heart. I wish you a deepening of taste for chanting Krishna's holy name with attention. May that deepen day by day. May you deepen in your taste for hearing and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. May you deepen in your appreciation for Vaishnavas. May your appreciation for Sri Vigraha, the deity, grow day by day. May your love for the place of Krishna's activities and service, the temple, the holy dhams, grow day by day. And as you deepen in your bhakti, in your love for Krishna, then I also pray that your heart softens to the point that you are driven to share these treasures of bhakti with others as well. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Salaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you all. We'll see you at the same time on Wednesday.